Welcome to this edition of Elections and State of the Nation. After the 2023 general elections, a lot of Nigerians were concerned about the role of the judiciary in our electoral process. Today, we are looking at a report produced by Policy and Legal Advocacy Center titled From Ballot to the Courts. My name is Agiampe Onyema. I coordinate the Secretariat of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room. Joining me today is one of the brilliant minds behind this report. Her name is Nkiru Uzodi. She is Program Manager, Legislative and Gender Issues at SPLAC. Nkiru, it's lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much, Agiampe. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So let's start with the basics. What inspired this report?
Okay, thank you for that question. So this report was born out of the need to critically analyze the outcomes of the 2023 general election petitions. It provides a detailed review of tribunal and court judgments, evaluating them against Nigeria's legal framework, including the Constitution and the Electoral Act 2022. So the goal is to promote understanding of election dispute resolution and as well supports ongoing discussions by stakeholders on electoral reforms.
Fantastic. Now, this report dives deep into the numbers. Can you share some of the key statistics and what they reveal about the electoral dispute system?
Absolutely. So we analyzed 1,503 election petition cases and election appeals. So out of this number, 895 election petition tribunal cases, only 11.1% of the 895 were successful, while 88.9% failed. At the Court of Appeal, 79.4% of about 588 appeals failed, while just 20.9% succeeded. So this shows a very high failure rate of petitions. It shows significant barriers in the system, including procedural issues. We had issues of jurisdiction, and challenges with petitioners discharging the burden of proof. So out of all these numbers, we discovered that only less than 27% of cases dealt with issues that were not on burden of proof. About 73% of cases were dismissed because petitioners could not provide credible and admissible evidence. And I think this actually provides an incentive for rigging, because basically what the statistics and numbers tell us is that most of the returns made by INEC during elections are actually affirmed by the courts. So we think, a lot of politicians are going to see this. I think, instead of going to court, spending money, might as well just, win by hook or crook at the polling units. So it is actually not very encouraging.
A lot of Nigerians are going to be shocked to hear this. But given these challenges, what recommendations does this report make to improve the system?
Okay, so we observed several trends and issues. I talked about issues with burden of proof. I talked about issues of jurisdiction. And for our viewers who don't understand what jurisdiction means, it's a threshold issue. Jurisdiction means, the authority of the courts to actually hear a petition, or we have issues of local standing, for instance, whether you have a right to bring an action or election petition before the tribunal. So, for instance, we observed cases where pre-election matters were brought to the post-election petition tribunal, which is actually not allowed because the Constitution is very clear on the powers and remit of the election petition tribunal. So anything pre-election, they don't hear. And then we also observe issues relating to procedure. For instance, election petitions must be filed within 21 days of the declaration of the results. And a lot of petitioners struggled with front-loading their evidence, especially with witness statements. So some of the recommendations include adjusting some of these requirements, because it's difficult to file the position of the statement of a witness, especially witnesses that you have to compel to come to court. And we're talking about people like INEC officials or the police. So there needs to be adjustment of these procedural requirements so that, the standard is actually fair. Because right now, a lot of petitioners and lawyers feel that the standard is unfair. And then there's also need to clarify the legal status of electronic transmission of results, because that was a really huge thing from 2023. A lot of people went into the elections thinking that transmission of election result was allowed by law. But the court has now said, no, it's not allowed. It's not in the Act, it's in the INEC regulations. So what it means is that if we want INEC to be mandated to transmit election results electronically, it has to be written specifically and clearly inside the Electoral Act. Then another recommendation, is reducing delays, in the adjudication process, especially for pre-election matters, because we observed a lot of pre-election cases still going on while elections had started, and that had implications, for outcomes, the post-election trial process. Then, of course, strengthening the judiciary's capacity to handle election petitions. There are still cases of inconsistent and conflicting judgment. That was very prominent in Imo and Plateau states, and it was also observed sparingly in Abia, Anambra states, but Plateau and Imo really stood out. So that's something that citizens need to advocate for the judiciary to address.
Very good. So overall, how do these findings and recommendations impact on democracy and governance?
So the findings and recommendations in this report are pivotal for Nigeria's democracy because they address the very foundation of trust in the electoral process. Mm-hmm. When citizens see that elections are credible and disputes are resolved fairly, it strengthens their belief in democratic institutions, and I'm referring to the election management body, that's INEC, and then the judiciary. So trust in these two institutions, is essential for political stability and public participation in governance. We saw the apathy after the election, in the off-cycle election. Lots of people just didn't want to come out to vote. And there are predictions that it's even going to get worse with future elections. The proposed reforms in these reports, I believe, have the potential to create a ripple effect. So the aim is that in these recommendations are adopted, to foster a more engaged citizenry and a governance system, or should I say an election dispute resolution system that reflects the will of the people and that is actually fair and just.
Thank you very much, Nkiru. But before we wrap up, a very short and simple message to Nigerians who want to engage this report.
Our message is simple. Our report is a civic tool. It is a call to action. It is a resource for citizens, for civil society organizations, lawyers, researchers, policymakers, and, just the ordinary citizen who is really curious about election dispute resolution. I encourage everyone to read the report, to discuss its findings. I use it to push for changes that will strengthen our democracy.
Thank you very much for your valuable insights. Thank you too for watching. And if you're listening and if you want to engage further, don't forget to download From Ballot to Courts. It's on PLAC's website, and explore the online database of case summaries also on PLAC's election cases directory. Let's work together to strengthen democracy in Nigeria. Thank you. Until next time.